Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something incredibly serious. A crisis, really. Bradford being flagged as a UK hotspot for child grooming.
Yes, it's a deeply disturbing subject, and, well, it's vital we talk about it
Mhm.
for the communities involved and, frankly, for child safety everywhere.
Absolutely. Our goal here is to try and unpack what's going on, not just the shocking numbers we're seeing, but also how the methods, the tactics are changing. We'll be looking at recent reports and, crucially, hearing from survivors.
That survivor testimony is so powerful, isn't it?
It really is. And campaigns, people like Fiona Goddard, they're painting this really grim picture. Bradford explicitly labeled the UK's grooming hotspot.
And it's not like this is entirely new. There have been convictions, but the activity just persists.
Exactly. There's one dossier from campaigners, quite investigative, warning that maybe up to 8,000 children in Bradford could have been at risk. That's between 1996 and just recently, 2025.
8,000. That scale potentially puts it beyond what we saw in, say, Rotherham or Rochdale.
It's staggering. And it's current, too. Police made arrests, apparently linked to suspicious activity with minors just a couple of weeks ago.
Right. So those figures, plus recent incidents,
Mm-hmm.
it really flies in the face of any idea that the systems we have in place have, somehow solved this.
So what are the reports telling us beyond the numbers?
Well, a key thing, maybe the key thing, is the shift in tactics. It's becoming much more sophisticated.
How so?
The sort of traditional street-level grooming, maybe happening around specific places like snooker clubs or parks, that seems to be reducing,
Okay.
but it's being replaced or maybe supplemented by really quite advanced online exploitation. Survivors are talking about platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok.
Right, where anonymity makes it easier.
Exactly. Anonymity fuels it. It allows a faster, much wider reach than offenders had before. The dossier also points to some, well, pretty glaring failures in how authorities collect and share data. Coordination seems to be a real issue.
That lack of coordination, combined with these huge figures you mentioned, it suggests a serious systemic problem, doesn't it? I remember another dossier from a law firm earlier suggesting maybe even 72,000 children could be at risk since the mid-90s.
72,000. I mean, these numbers are almost hard to comprehend. It does feel comparable to the scale people associate with Rotherham.
And we hear these awful stories like Scarlett West, a survivor who talked about being trafficked to Bradford hundreds of times by a gang.
Yes, her testimony was harrowing. And these aren't just isolated incidents. They point to, well, profound failings in the system.
When places that should be safe or even just public spaces become hubs for this kind of abuse.
It's an indictment, really, an indictment of the statutory agencies, social services, the police, the bodies legally meant to protect children. Their intervention capabilities seem stretched or perhaps flawed.
Even the police seem to acknowledge things are changing.
They do. Law enforcement admits the traditional patterns are shifting. Those older avenues might be closing down somewhat, but online grooming, undeniably rising.
So this move online, it brings in tech companies too, doesn't it? That's a whole new dimension. How are authorities actually responding to this evolving threat?
Well, Detective Inspector Alan Clitheroe, he's with Greater Manchester Police, confirmed it. They're still monitoring traditional channels, of course, but the digital space, that's where the abuse is really thriving now. It lets offenders cross boundaries, geographical boundaries, with much more anonymity.
And didn't the Casey audit touch on this too?
Yes, the Casey audit, which is a really influential review, it highlighted horrendous online exploitation, and it gave this chilling warning. The next Rotherham could very well start online.
So concrete steps, what's being done?
The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has announced a new national inquiry. It's set for 3 years, crucially with statutory powers. And they're tightening laws.
Like mandatory rape charges for sex with under 16s.
Exactly. That, improving data collection on ethnicity, closing legal loopholes that might have been exploited.
Okay, that sounds significant.
And importantly, they plan to reopen over 800 cold cases. These are old investigations, maybe stalled for years, lack of evidence, leads went cold. They could see new action now.
Reopening cold cases, that's huge. But there's still a push for something more specific to Bradford, isn't there? Despite the apologies from the council, the jail sentences, over 50 people jailed. Hundreds of years in total sentences.
Yes, precisely. Survivors and campaigners, they're still arguing Bradford needs its own independent inquiry, not just to be part of the national one.
That distinction feels really important. What does that specific demand tell us about perceived gaps, maybe, in the national approach?
Well, it suggests, I think, a pretty deep lack of trust. a feeling that a broad national inquiry might not fully grasp or address the very localized systemic failures that let this crisis carry on in Bradford for so long.
So a call for accountability tailored right to that community.
Exactly. It's about understanding the unique context there. And what's fascinating here, really, is how much power you, the listener, have to make a difference in supporting that call, in demanding that tailored accountability.
It really comes back to vigilance, doesn't it? If you suspect grooming, whether you see something concerning online or out in public, you need to report it immediately.
Yes. Support survivors if you can. Demand that accountability we talked about.
It means understanding this fight isn't just for the police or social services. It needs everyone to be more aware, more vigilant. It's a community effort.
Knowledge has to lead to action.
Thank you so much for shedding light on this incredibly difficult topic today. And thank you, our listener, for joining us. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and be part of the solution. Goodbye for now.